Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. This is Ask the Experts here on Talk Radio 1190, where we interview local prominent professionals here in the beautiful Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. On what? Well, their area of expertise, of course. I'm the host of the show, Matt Cather, and joining me on today's show, great to have him back, it's attorney Mark Underwood. Before we get to Mark, we're going to, a quick note. You can find them online at underwoodlawoffice.com. That's underwoodlawoffice.com. You can give them a call if you want to reach out to this for their services. It's 844-UNDERWOOD. That's 844-UNDERWOOD, or you could also go 972-535-6377. That's 972-535-6377. He's a personal injury attorney, and his offices are located in McKinney, Texas. Mark, welcome to the show. Great to have you back, sir.
Matt, it's 2022, and we're back again.
We're back again. We're having a good time. I say beautiful Dallas-Fort Worth area, but it's a little cold right now. But we're dealing with it.
Matt, how cold is it on your end of town?
Oh man, I think we're looking. I'm right in Addison. I think we're knocking on the door. What 30s into 30s for sure.
I think we might be high 28, 29 right now in McKinney.
Man.
At least the roads are not icy.
Yeah. We always got to look on the bright side of it, right?
There you go. You and me will look on the bright side. We'll let everybody else look on the negative side of things.
Well, Mark, so like you said, it is 2022. We haven't, talked much this year. But hey, if that's the case, and people haven't been able to catch up on the shows, give them a quick overview. Tell them a little bit about yourself and your business, and we'll jump into a little bit of questions because we got a lot of information to cover on today's show.
So, hey, man, we've discussed this on previous episodes, but I'm a personal injury lawyer in McKinney, Texas. Originally, I'm from Huntington, West Virginia, but my wife is from McKinney, so we opened an office down here in McKinney after the West Texas fertilizer plant exploded, killing 15 people and injuring about 400 others and destroying about a third of the town. I had some experience with brain injuries from explosions from a case called Upper Big Branch in West Virginia, where 29 coal miners had died and about 25 others had sustained pretty significant brain injuries. So I got involved in the West Texas fertilizer plant explosion because a lot of those injuries were very similar to the brain injuries that we saw in Upper Big Branch. And we opened the office down here in McKinney, Texas, in the summer of 2013, just a few months after the April 2013 West Texas fertilizer plant explosion. So we do some of the worst disasters in the country. Like we were talking about a moment ago, we did the Upper Big Branch coal mine explosion. We had 182 clients in the West Texas fertilizer plant explosion. We handled a water crisis where the city's water supply in Charleston, West Virginia was poisoned by chemicals for about a week and had to shut down. There's a large environmental class action resulting from that. Another one of our cases is the Arkham chemical explosion that happened during Hurricane Harvey. And there was also the Intercontinental's terminal case, which happened in the spring of 2019, where a oil terminal, petrochemical terminal down in Houston caught fire, spewing lots of hazardous chemicals over a large area for about a week. So we do some of the largest disasters in the country, and at the same time, we also have the staff that will do a car wreck case. Sometimes a car wreck case can be the worst disaster that's happened to a particular person, and we'll do a car wreck case. We also will do slip and falls. We've also, and I think we've talked about in the past, we've also done animal attack cases, dog attack cases that resulted in people being, nearly mauled to death. So we do a wide range of personal injury cases, from the smallest to some of the largest in the country. So that's basically what we're about. And we're located up here in McKinney. You can call us at 844-UNDERWOOD or check us out on the web at underwoodlawoffice.com.
Yeah, and I know we mentioned at the beginning of the show the weather, and that kind of really plays into what we're going to be talking about today. And so for the listeners out there, this is a perfect episode to tune into, and really important because if you're dealing with a car accident right now due to icy roads, well, marking them is going to cover all the information on today's show and what you should look for and how everything plays out. We did see a huge pileup that happened last year here in the DFW. Good things so far. It looks like we're not dealing with a pileup, but in the end, definitely some car accidents throughout the DFW. So why don't we just start there? What essentially causes the car pileups when there's icy roads? Since that's definitely been something we deal with the past month, as we've had a couple different instances where we've seen some significant ice here in the DFW.
We sure have. And if you remember, it was February 11th, 2021, that the pileup in Fort Worth happened. Mm-hmm. I think there were about 8 people that were killed in that pileup, and I think hundreds ended up being injured. And if you look on the web at the pictures from that pileup and the semi-tractor trailers and the FedEx trucks that were piled up, it was really disastrous. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, pileups on icy roads typically happen due to a failure to slow down. You got to drive slow. You got to drive a lot slower, much, much, much slower when there's ice on the roads. And if you don't, it's really easy for your tires to lose traction. Of course, when there's ice on the road, the coefficient of friction between the tires and the roads go way down, which makes your vehicle a lot more difficult to control. Most of the time, it's best, at least in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, to stay home until the roads have been salted or sanded or even plowed, although plowing does not happen very much. Of course, the other thing you're dealing with when there's ice on the roads in Dallas-Fort Worth is inexperienced drivers. The drivers in Dallas-Fort Worth don't have the type of experience that somebody who drives around Colorado or up in the mountains of Colorado or Wyoming or even back east. They don't have the type of experience over many, many years that the people in those areas have driving. So they don't slow down, and a lot of times they'll apply their brakes incorrectly, which results in a lot of the pileups that we have due to icy roads.
Yeah, black ice is a real thing, and I think that's been apparent throughout this week for sure. Now, something I'm sure a lot of people are really interested in, myself included, how do insurance and companies determine who was at fault in a vehicle pileup crash due to these icy roads?
Well, that's a great question, Matt.
Sometimes
I just think they roll the dice or pick numbers out of the air or maybe draw cards off a deck. But
the shortest straw,
the shortest straw ends up with the liability. But and that makes the point that different insurance companies will determine fault in different ways. And, of course, juries will determine fault in different ways from insurance companies. But the basic process an insurance company will look at is, number one, they'll do an investigation. During an investigation, they will take statements from everybody that's involved, or at least everybody that will give them a statement, because not everybody will. They will take photos of the vehicles that are involved, documenting the damage, and they will also look at the types of damage that was done to each of the cars. During the investigation, they have some different principles they'll look at, but a lot of the time they're trying to prove that the person that they insured that was involved in the accident was not at fault. So rather than looking towards objectively determining who is at fault, a lot of times they're just trying to build a case as to why their insured is not at fault.
Now, if somebody's in this situation and they had to speak to an insurance adjuster or whatever it might be, do they have to in that instance? If they're caught up in this situation, do they have to speak to an insurance adjuster? How does that work?
So, Matt, there's two answers to that question. You don't have to speak to somebody else's insurance adjuster.
Okay.
But typically, most insurance policies have a duty of cooperation with your own insurance company. So most of the times you're going to be required to give a statement to your insurance company, but you don't have to give a statement to somebody else's insurance company. And, it's interesting. I remember as a very, very young lawyer, insurance adjuster calling me up and wanting to take a statement from my client. And we thought maybe the case could be resolved relatively quickly, and the client wanted to get their property damage taken care of and wanted to get their personal injuries taken care of pretty quickly. So we agreed to give the insurance adjuster a statement. And we went over to it was an independent insurance agency back then. We went over to the office, we sat down, the insurance adjuster turned on the tape recorder, and for the next 10 minutes, he did everything he possibly could to try to make it look like my client was at fault in a case where where the client was rear-ended. And I learned a lesson during that afternoon, which was, the insurance adjusters for somebody else are not on your side, and they're trying to prove that their insured was not at fault and somehow you were responsible for your own injuries. So in short, you have to provide one to your insurance company. You don't have to provide one to the other guy's insurance company.
Remember, folks, we're talking with sorry about that. Remember, folks, we're talking with Mark Underwood today on Ask the Experts. If you want to reach out to the fine folks over there, you can find them online first at underwoodlawoffice.com, underwoodlawoffice.com. Plenty of information on there, so check out the website. If you want to give them a call, totally fine as well. 844-UNDERWOOD. That's 844-UNDERWOOD. Or you could also have the opportunity at 972-535-6377. That's 972-535-6377. A personal injury attorney, and his office is located in McKinney, Texas. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got a lot of information to get on to the other side of things, so I want to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll wrap things up and pick up where we left off here on Ask the Experts. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the other side of things here on Talk Radio 1190. All right. Welcome back, folks. This is Ask the Experts here on Talk Radio 1190. We interview local prominent professionals here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex on their area of expertise. Of course, I'm the host of the show, Matt Cather. Joining me on today's show is Mark Underwood, personal injury attorney located in McKinney, Texas. Underwoodlawoffice.com is the website you can find them at. That's underwoodlawoffice.com, or 844-UNDERWOOD is the phone number if you'd like to reach out to them and ask them questions, whatever they'd love to hear from you either way. Let's jump right back into things. We've been talking about car accidents today, pertaining more to icy roads, something that we've really seen here in the DFW the past couple weeks, this week especially as well. And let's jump right into NTSB. When it comes to a pileup of car accidents, does NTSB investigate that? How does that work?
So the NTSB is the National Transportation Safety Board, and it typically investigates things like airplane accidents, train wrecks, sometimes other transportation crashes and problems. Rarely do they investigate a car accident, virtually never. But as large as the pileup was last year in Fort Worth, the NTSB did do an investigation in that case. And if it's a really large pileup, like we saw last year in Fort Worth, probably none of the pileups we saw in the last week are probably big enough. But if it's a pileup as big as last year, the NTSB will come in and investigate.
Yeah, and no surprise to that. That was so catastrophic. It was, and I'll never forget that. The image is still, like you said, it's really crazy. Now, in terms of insurance, Mark, what kinds of insurance issues will result from a pileup in Texas? And I'm assuming that, like many other things, it depends on what state as well. Correct?
Correct. The biggest insurance issue you have in a major pileup is there not being enough insurance. So the big problem that you see in a lot of these car crashes and the big pileups is there's just simply not enough insurance to go around. And you see that in a pileup as big as Fort Worth was last year. You also will see that in a 2 or 3 or maybe a 4-car pileup. And plaintiffs' attorneys run into that all the time, and there's just simply not enough insurance to go around. That's the most critical insurance issue. The other insurance issues that you also run into is underinsurance and uninsurance. Uninsurance, as the name sounds, is used when the at-fault vehicle doesn't have any insurance. Underinsurance is used when the at-fault vehicle doesn't have enough insurance. So it's a coverage that you buy, you pay for yourself, and if you're in a car accident, the other person's at fault and they don't have enough insurance, you can tap into that. A lot of people seem to skip over both uninsurance and underinsurance in Texas when they're buying their insurance policies, and it's really a really big mistake. We have a lot of uninsured and underinsured drivers in Texas, and you've got to protect yourself by buying as much underinsurance and uninsurance as you can afford. There's just nothing worse than a client coming into your office. It looks like they have a pretty good case. You feel terrible for them because they have suffered terrible, severe injuries and damages. And you start looking at the police report, you start looking at potential coverages, and you find out there is actually no insurance by the at-fault party that would provide coverage for the victim. And you have to tell the client, sometimes when they've lost a child, that there's just not any insurance or there's not enough insurance to make the case worthwhile. So it is really, really important when you go to buy your insurance to pay those few extra dollars to buy as much uninsurance and underinsurance as you can possibly afford. I mean, I drive around with about $1 million of uninsurance and underinsurance on my vehicle because if I'm in a catastrophic accident that should happen to injure my child, I want to make sure there's enough out there to pay for the damages, including any extensive medical treatment that may be needed.
And that's why we have people like you on to explain the situation, because I know a lot of people probably don't understand and completely maybe overlook that sometimes, unfortunately.
People overlook uninsurance and underinsurance all the time. They talk to their agent. The agent says, I suggest you buy uninsurance, underinsurance. The person asks them, do I have to? Is that required? Do I have to pay for that? The agent says, no, they're not required in Texas. And the person immediately says, well, I want to save that money. And they do save that money, but they're definitely being penny wise and pound foolish.
Say you're in this situation, God forbid, but I know if somebody's in this situation, they're probably really curious on who would have to pay and who pays for this mass car pileup due to icy roads if that situation does arise.
Well, of course, the first step is determining who's at fault. Once
Correct.
fault is determined, it's going to be typically the insurance company for the at-fault person, or if the at-fault person was acting in the course and scope of their employment, it could be the employer, for example, Federal Express, and Federal Express's insurance company for the drivers of the Federal Express trucks if they happen to be at fault. So typically you're looking at first line is insurance, second line is deep pockets, third line is assets beyond insurance.
844-UNDERWOOD. That's 844-UNDERWOOD is the phone number you can find them at. You could also try 972-535-6377. Either one is totally fine. That's 972-535-6377. UnderwoodLawOffice.com. That's UnderwoodLawOffice.com. And like I said, his office is located in McKinney, Texas. Now, we're coming up towards the end of the show, Mark, but there's two questions I really want to get into, two important questions. If somebody unfortunately is dealing with this, how soon should a victim file a claim?
So you need to file a claim as quickly as possible. The reason for that is because the insurance money might run out. And typically, Texas is a first-come, first-served state. So if you make a claim early in a case for insurance, you can jump to the front of the line in front of all the people that haven't made claims. So you want to make your claim as quickly as possible before an insurance policy is exhausted or runs out or is paid out to the large number of other people that can be involved in one of these icy road pileups.
Lastly, Mark, and a really important one, like I said, if somebody's in this situation, when should they seek an attorney?
So that goes hand in hand with the last question, which was how soon should you file a claim? Not only should you file a claim, but you should get an attorney to file that claim for you, because what will happen is you'll file a claim. If you're not represented, typically you'll go to the bottom of the pile. If you are represented, you're going to get more attention. They're going to consider your claim faster. If they consider your claim faster, you're more likely to get paid than other people who aren't making a claim or who are not represented. So you need to make a claim as quickly as possible. You need to let an attorney do that. Of course, typically attorneys have expertise in making these claims. They know how to get your medical records. They know how to get documentation of your lost wages. They know how to prove the value of your car that was damaged in the pileup. And by putting all of that together in the format that the insurance company expects, you can get to the front of the line as far as being paid out. And of course, once the policy is paid out by the insurance company, they no longer have a duty to pay anything else. So as soon as they pay their policy limits, they are done. So you want to make your claim before those policy limits are paid to somebody else.
That's very interesting. I'm glad you shared that. The policy limit, I don't think a lot of people understand that part of it, and that's pretty key, I'd imagine.
Agreed. And of course, in Texas, you have some small policies in the $30,000 to $30,000 range, and then you have policies in the $100,000 range, and then you might go up to $250,000, you might go up to $500,000, and you might go up to $1 million. Well, the vast majority of policies out there are $30,000. So you can imagine how quickly a $30,000 / $60,000 policy will be paid out if there are 5, 6, 7, or 100 cars involved in a pileup.
Mark, we got to wrap things up on the show. Why don't you kind of give us, the listeners out there, closing remarks, maybe touch on anything if we didn't cover real quickly?
Hey, so my name is Mark Underwood. I'm the owner of Underwood Law Office. When disaster strikes your family, we're the law firm to call. We've done some of the biggest cases in the country, and we've done some of the smallest cases in the country. We're happy to work with you when disaster strikes you or your family. Call us at 844-UNDERWOOD or look us up on the web at underwoodlawoffice.com. That's 844-UNDERWOOD if you want to call us, or www.underwoodlawoffice.com. Thanks for having me on the show again, Matt.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. We always have a great topic. We always have a great discussion when you're on. And I tell you what, Mark, I look forward to having you on here very soon. And I know the listeners appreciate everything you do out there.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Absolutely. We've been talking with personal injury attorney, Mark Underwood. Like I said, his office is located in McKinney, Texas. You can reach out to him via phone, 844-UNDERWOOD. That's 844-UNDERWOOD. You can find him online at underwoodlawoffice.com. You can even drive up there and pick their brain personally. They love to hear from you either way, whether it's in person or over the phone or internet. One more show before we wrap things up here. Always a pleasure having attorney Mark Underwood on the show. We look forward to talking to him soon, and I know we will. So stay tuned, folks. This has been another edition of Ask the Experts here on Talk Radio 1190.